What if I told you that General Motors' most devastating internal war wasn't against Ford or Chrysler, but between two of their own engines that were so perfectly engineered, they threatened to expose GM's biggest lie about displacement psychology? The Chevrolet 348 versus 409 battle nearly destroyed everything GM believed about corporate hierarchy. Historical context. Welcome to 1958, the year General Motors accidentally created their own worst nightmare by building two big block engines so fundamentally superior to everything else in their lineup that corporate executives spent the next decade trying to figure out which one to kill before customers discovered the truth about both. The 348 versus 409 controversy represents the ultimate example of GM's inability to recognize their own engineering genius when it threatened established profit structures. The 348 emerged from GM's Project Thunder, a classified development program designed to create the ultimate big block engine that could establish Chevrolet's performance credibility against Ford's growing racing dominance. Corporate engineers knew they were building something revolutionary, incorporating advanced W-head technology and precision manufacturing that represented decades of research into optimal combustion chamber design and breathing characteristics. But GM's success with the 348 created an unexpected corporate crisis when marketing departments realized they had built an engine so advanced that it made their entire existing lineup look primitive and obsolete. The solution was typically GM. Instead of celebrating their achievement, they decided to build an even bigger version that would make the 348 look inadequate by comparison, creating artificial hierarchy through displacement psychology rather than honest engineering improvement. Enter the 409 project, developed under the codename Operation Maximum. GM's attempt to create displacement superiority that would justify killing the 348th while maintaining the illusion of technological progress. Corporate executives assumed that bigger displacement would automatically mean better performance, but they had no idea their engineers were about to prove that advanced engineering mattered more than cubic inches. The internal testing began revealing GM's worst fears. Both engines were so perfectly engineered that displacement advantage meant almost nothing in real-world applications. The 348 and 409 achieved nearly identical performance characteristics through different approaches to the same fundamental engineering challenges, proving that GM's entire displacement-based marketing strategy was corporate mythology rather than mechanical reality. The conspiracy to hide GM's greatest internal contradiction had officially begun. Technical details. The specifications General Motors published for both engines represent the most sophisticated campaign of fraternal suppression in automotive history. And when you understand what GM was really trying to hide, you'll realize why they treated both development programs like classified military projects that could expose their corporate foundation as built on technological lies. GM claimed the 348th produced anywhere from 250 to 315 horsepower depending on configuration, while the 409th was rated at 360 to 425 horsepower in its various applications. These numbers were carefully manipulated to maintain displacement hierarchy while hiding the fact that both engines were systematically limited to prevent direct performance comparisons that would expose the arbitrary nature of GM's cubic inch psychology. The 348 featured a 4.125-inch bore and 3.25-inch stroke with revolutionary W-head combustion chamber technology that created breathing characteristics decades ahead of conventional big block designs. But the real advanced technology was hidden in the precision manufacturing and metallurgy. GM engineers had developed casting techniques and bearing systems that allowed the 348 to operate at stress levels that would destroy conventional engines while maintaining reliability that exceeded customer expectations. Internal GM dyno sheets, leaked by disgusted engineers decades later, revealed that properly tuned 348 engines routinely produced over 400 horsepower during factory testing while achieving fuel economy that embarrassed smaller displacement competitors. The advanced W-head design, sophisticated port shapes, and precision balancing meant these engines they had accidentally proven that advanced engineering excellence mattered more than cubic inches, creating a corporate crisis that threatened their most fundamental business assumptions. The conspiracy. Here's where General Motors' corporate strategy reveals itself as the most self-destructive campaign of internal technological warfare in automotive history. They didn't just compete against external rivals, they systematically sabotaged their own engineering achievements to maintain artificial hierarchies that served corporate politics rather than customer satisfaction or engineering excellence. The conspiracy operated through deliberate market manipulation that positioned the 348 as outdated technology while promoting the 409 as advanced displacement superiority, when internal documents prove both engines represented identical engineering approaches with minimal performance differences. GM equipped the 348 with increasingly restrictive components and conservative tuning while simultaneously limiting 409 availability to prevent customers from conducting objective comparisons that might expose the manufactured nature of their supposed differences. Corporate executives made the calculated decision to kill the 348 program rather than admit that displacement advantage was marketing fiction. Internal memos revealed that GM was terrified customers would discover that properly built 348 engines could match 409 performance while offering superior fuel economy and lower manufacturing costs, potentially destroying their entire big block profit strategy. The parts restriction conspiracy was implemented on a corporate scale, with GM deliberately discontinuing high-performance 348 components while steering customers toward 409 upgrades that generated higher profit margins. Dealerships were instructed to discourage 348 sales through pricing strategies and availability limitations that made 409 options seem more attractive, regardless of actual customer needs or application requirements. Most shocking of all, internal communications revealed that GM executives were driving company cars equipped with specially tuned 348 engines that produced more power than production 409s while achieving better fuel economy and emissions compliance. They knew exactly what they were sacrificing, choosing corporate hierarchy over engineering honesty and customer service, racing, legacy, and truth. When both engines found their way onto racetracks where their true capabilities could be objectively measured, the results exposed everything General Motors had been desperately trying to hide from the motorsport community. The racing legacy of the 348 versus 409 battle reads like a catalog of suppressed performance parity that GM would prefer remained buried in racing archives. NASCAR became the proving ground where both engines' actual capabilities were accidentally discovered by teams forced to work within GM's artificial restrictions while competing against Ford and Chrysler power plants that didn't share GM's internal political complications. Professional drivers reported that properly prepared 348 engines delivered lap times and reliability characteristics that were virtually identical to 409 power plants, proving that displacement advantage was meaningless when both engines shared identical engineering approaches. Drag racing provided even more damning evidence of performance parity between both engines. Independent teams discovered that quarter-mile performance differences between optimally built 348 and 409 engines were measured in hundredths of seconds rather than the significant gaps GM's marketing claimed. Both power plants could achieve consistent 11-second elapsed times with proper preparation, while offering reliability characteristics that exceeded purpose-built racing engines from other manufacturers. The most shocking revelations came from engine builders who conducted systematic comparisons using identical modifications and testing procedures on both power plants. These tests proved that power output, torque characteristics, and modification potential were virtually identical when comparing engines built to similar specifications, with success depending more on preparation quality than fundamental displacement advantages. Street racing communities discovered that both engines could be modified to achieve nearly identical performance levels, creating underground knowledge networks that proved GM's internal warfare was based on corporate politics rather than mechanical reality. Collector status and modern influence today, the collector market has rendered its verdict on GM's fraternal warfare. And the truth corporate executives tried to suppress is now written in auction results and restoration costs that prove both engines represented equally advanced approaches to original 348 engines have achieved significant collector status among enthusiasts who recognize them as representing GM's first successful big block design, with clean examples commanding $8,000 to $18,000 depending on configuration and documentation. Meanwhile, 409 power plants achieve similar pricing among collectors who understand their historical significance, with documented examples reaching $25,000 when accompanied by proper racing provenance. Contemporary engine builders treat both power plants as equally capable foundations for modern performance applications, with aftermarket support that reflects recognition of their identical potential rather than the artificial differences GM promoted during their original production years. Modern engine management systems, fuel injection technology, and computer-controlled ignition can extract over 600 horsepower from properly built examples of either engine. The restoration industry has developed parallel expertise around both engines, with machine shops charging comparable rates for rebuild services that reflect similar complexity and parts availability. Original components for both power plants have achieved similar collector values, creating investment opportunities for enthusiasts who understand their importance as the engines that proved GM's displacement psychology was corporate mythology. So there you have it. The truth about General Motors' most successful campaign of fraternal destruction. The Chevrolet 348 versus 409 controversy wasn't about engineering superiority. It was about GM systematically destroying their own technological achievement to maintain artificial corporate hierarchies that served management psychology rather than customer needs or engineering excellence. Hit that subscribe button right now because next week, I'm exposing the Ford FE390 versus 427 conspiracy that involved corporate executives deliberately sabotaging their smaller engine to justify their big block investments. Ring that notification bell because the truth about automotive fraternal warfare runs deeper than anyone imagined.